国。
Well, thank you very much, Secretary Carter, for your clear and systematic representation of U.S. position. I just think that the dispute between China and the U.S. over the South China Sea has been overblown. It is only part of the relationship between our two countries, which is, huge, vast, and complicated. So I think this issue probably should be put into proper perspective. Secondly, I think the artificial islands China builds, China's practice is not an exception. I think a lot of countries have engaged in this kind of practice, including Vietnam, Philippines, even Japan, South Korea. So why focus on China? Also, the right to one difference between China and the U.S. over the freedom of navigation in the high seas. I think both China and the U.S. are committed to this principle. However, there is one difference. That is, China believes that this does not give the right to other countries to conduct military sales of military ships and aircrafts close to the other country's coast, even though it's in the high seas. But the U.S. believes that it is important to maintain this right. That's the difference between China and the U.S. over the so-called freedom of navigation in the high seas. My question is, why the U.S. attaches so much importance to the right to send ships and aircrafts to, conduct activities near other countries' coast? Why it is so important? Could you explain? Thank you very much.
Yes, what we stand for is the principle of rule of law and abiding by international law in the commons, which means freedom of navigation in the sea and in the air. That is what we're standing for. It's not a focus on China, it's a focus on principle. And you're right, China is not the only country that has taken actions. And the United States, as I said before, doesn't take a side in the disputes themselves over sovereignty, but it does take a side on principle, meaning peaceful resolution of these disputes through diplomacy and freedom of the commons. So it's a principle that we side with. And it's not a dispute between the United States and China. It is a question of principle. The reason that people are focusing on China this year is because China is doing by far and away more of this kind of reclamation and militarization than any other party. That's the reason why the parties in the region who are concerned about principle are focusing on China. It's China's actions that are causing that attention, but the attention is occasioned by a concern over the principles of peaceful resolution of disputes, non-coercion, and freedom of navigation, which are important principles to everyone in the region. By the way, they're important principles around the world. So they're important ones to stand for. And I would say finally that in the connection of perspective, I would say that from a global perspective, from a regional perspective, and from a principle perspective, these actions by anyone, but especially by China over the last couple of years, are destabilizing. and as I indicated earlier, self-isolating, which is regrettable since our vision, the American vision of security for this region, as I indicated, is one of an inclusive security network.